Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. I'll do my best. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jill Irving Bishop, and I'm the director of the Senior Center. So welcome to our Senior Center this morning. My standing joke is I don't have the best vocal cords, so I do hope that you can hear me, but I do have a great work ethic. So trust me on that. At the April 2013 town meeting, the Council on Aging announced that we'd be conducting a needs assessment study. And we contracted with the UMass Boston Gerontology Institute to coordinate this process with us. And they are here this morning to provide us the final report. But first, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who took the time to participate in any one of the elements of the needs assessment process. Some of you may see your picture here on the screen from our public forum. We began in the spring with a community forum with standing room only sessions, and it was fabulous and lively discussion. We had an incredible response to the detailed survey and the community questionnaire. I'd also like to thank the town officials and the local residents and organizations who shared their thoughts during the interview process and as well as the focus groups. And I'd like to give a special thank you to Jan Muchler and her team from UMass for all their hard work in conducting this process. They have been an absolute pleasure to work with. And now I'd like to introduce Jan Muchler from the UMass Boston Gerontology Institute to provide us with our final report. Enjoy the show.
How about this one? Is it? Oh, very good. Thank you. Nope, not yet. More? How's that? Okay, I will do my best. And if you're not hearing me, just wave your arms or yell at me or something like that, okay? No problem. All right, I am very pleased to be here with you today. There we go, to talk about the end result of this process, many months process, this path that I have walked with all of you. When I was here way back in May to do the initial community forums, I was beginning to learn about your community and the issues related to seniors and the senior center. At that time, it was clear that this is a wonderful community that has many wonderful amenities about it, not the least of which is the people who run and staff your senior center and care so much about people in the community. But there were also some concerns, some worries, some challenges. And so our goal was really to provide the town of Falmouth with some information that they could use as they begin the planning process for revising the way they provide service to seniors, potentially looking for some new physical plans, thinking about how are they going to continue to meet the needs of seniors now and in the future. So it has been a great, I've had a great time, my students have had a great time working with all of you, and I'm here today to tell you a little bit about what we learned. So Jill already went over this content a little bit with you, but there was a multi-phasic process that we put in place here. We had a lot of different components of this. The first was that community forum, but we really had a lot of conversations with Jill and with others that she works with before then to try to get a feel of what really is going on in the town and what was it that you wanted to put in place as an assessment process. What was clear from the very beginning is that the issues relating to seniors aren't about this building. They're not just about the senior center or what happens in these walls. It really is about the entire community. This is a community, and we've done a number of these studies now. At this point, we're continuing to do them, and I'm a demographer. I do a lot of demographic work relating to Massachusetts and what's happening in communities. This is a very, what we call a very old community. And by that, I just mean that the population has a lot of older people in it. And as you'll see in a moment, the expectations are that that is just going to continue and get even more substantial. Now, if you have a community like that, you can't be focusing just on one organization within the community. You can't just say, oh, seniors, that's a senior center issue. Jill will deal with that, okay? It really is something that has to involve the entire community, has to be incorporated into much of what the community does. So I think that was the thing that was obvious from the very beginning of our conversations, and that drove our assessment process. That's why we had all of these different components. We wanted to hear from everybody in the community, not just today's seniors, but also tomorrow's seniors, from others in the community, from other offices and town organizations, and really just as many people as we could possibly hear from. That's what we wanted to do. And so in my own defense, I'll say maybe that's why it took so long. It took about 5 months from beginning to end. But we also, we heard a lot of important things, and I think that that lends strength to the result. This is the graph that I was referring to a moment ago. It tells you about what's been happening in terms of the Falmouth population, the age structure, and what's expected to happen in the future. As you can see, this from this point, we got 1980 demographic statistics at the start. We go up to 2000, and then we go down to 2010. This top line is the population of Falmouth under age 60. So I just took the population, all age population, divided it into the 60 and over, which we call the senior population, and the under age 60 population. And you can see what's been happening over the last 40 years is very clear, all right? The population 60 and over has been growing dramatically, okay? At this point, 2010, the population 60 and over is about 1/3 of the total population in Falmouth, right? In the last 10 years, there was a decline in the population of Falmouth that was under age 60. The last 2 points on this graph are projections that were generated by the Donahue Institute at the University of Massachusetts. Town-level projections that are clearly more or less an extension of what has been happening in the recent past. All right. So nothing about that, of course, is set in stone. But usually your best guess about what's going to happen in the future is based on what has been happening in the recent past. And if we carry those projections, if you take those projections at face value, it suggests that within less than 20 years, Falmouth seniors are going to be half of the entire population of Falmouth. Okay. So this is very substantial growth. It's very important. And again, I think it highlights why this is not just about the senior center. It's about the entire town. Okay. So what we wanted to do by putting in place a large sample survey is we wanted to hear about both of those important aspects relating to seniors in Falmouth. We wanted to hear about what was happening in the senior center, what was valued in the senior center, what the senior center might be looking forward to in the near future. We also wanted to think about what's happening in the town. What are some of the town issues that are advantages for seniors, strengths, challenges, that kind of thing. And so we asked about both of those sets of issues. Thinking first about the town in general, we heard a lot about many, many strengths in Falmouth. People, older people as younger people, are here because of its many amenities. There are wonderful things happening in Falmouth, and people want to stay here. Seniors heavily reported that they want to stay in the community. Many of them, many of you, have been here for many, many years, and this is where you want to stay. So 65% of the seniors in the survey said that it's very important to stay here. They want to stay in place. Many seniors are active and engaged. That activity, that being engaged with the community, involvement in civic activities, things like that, very important to people. Many seniors, most seniors, about 80% of them, have people that they talk to every day, multiple times a week. They're engaged. They're not at home waiting for the phone to call. They're out, they're involved with people. And seniors are typically in good health in Falmouth, according to our evidence. 85% of them rate their health as excellent or good. Most of them say that they're not really struggling economically. Yet we did hear about some challenges, one of them being driving, right? Falmouth is a community that does have some public transportation options, but we heard that they really weren't sufficient. Most seniors in the community drive, but especially among the older seniors, those in their 70s and their 80s, they put more restrictions on their own driving. They don't drive at night. They don't drive on the highway. They don't go out in bad weather, that kind of thing. Those kinds of restrictions gradually narrow their ability to do the things that they want to do. In the absence of good public transportation options and a culture that makes that usable and affordable, then people find their world shrinking somewhat because they can't get out and do the things that they want to do. We heard about family caregiving. A lot of people in Falmouth are involved in caregiving for other adults who are either older or disabled, have some needs for assistance. A lot of people are involved in that. Those who are involved in it are often finding that hard. They're finding that difficult. And so that's an area where people could use some support, they could use some guidance, they could use better information about where to turn for support and assistance with that. There are pockets of insecurity in Falmouth that people ought not overlook. I think people tend to think of Cape Cod and they think of this wonderful place where everybody's wonderful and everybody's got this great life and these great homes and no economic worries, nothing like that. And in fact, there are a lot of people like that in this community, but there are pockets of insecurity. There are people in Falmouth, seniors in Falmouth, who really are struggling financially, who really do have some needs for assistance, who don't have the kind of social support that they need. So that's a group that we ought not overlook. In our statistics, we suggested that 14% of seniors don't expect to have adequate financial resources. So they're concerned about maintaining their homes, keeping their homes, paying their taxes. And then we heard quite a bit about concerns about emergency services for frail and isolated residents. We heard primarily about this theme from the focus groups and from our interviews with town officials. People who are, it's a recurring theme that there are some seniors in the community that live here, their children are gone, they live alone, they live in somewhat isolated parts of town, they live on streets where maybe they don't know their neighbors well because the neighbors have turned over, and a big storm comes along and the kids start calling the police department or the fire department and saying, please go check on my mother, please take her to the shelter, mom doesn't want to go. So there's this kind of, what do we do? What is the town's responsibility? What are the issues relating to emergency services in the community with respect to seniors? So that is a big concern on the minds of many people in the community. We also heard a lot and asked a lot about the Council on Aging Senior Center. What's happening here? What people are looking for? How satisfied are they with the Senior Center? And I just wanted to put this chart up quickly because it really describes how people's conceptions of what the Senior Center are often incomplete. I think when we think about a senior center here or elsewhere, we tend to think primarily about services that are offered through the senior center. For instance, people may say, oh, I know the senior center, that's where I can go get my blood pressure checked, something like that. Or they think about activities at the senior center. They say, oh, I know there's a group that meets on Wednesdays to play cards, or I know I can come here and take an exercise class, something like that. Or they have great trips, right? So people tend to think about those two dimensions when they think about the senior center. But there are two other important sets of responsibilities that senior centers have and that this senior center has. One is referral, information and referral. There are a lot of programs and services elsewhere in the community, or state programs, federal programs, that seniors are eligible for. And they can get information here about those programs. And so that's a really important part of their responsibility. And in fact, the senior center staff spends a lot of time doing that kind of giving people information and referring them to programs for which they may be eligible. The other important thing, and this is often almost invisible, is leadership in the community. Sometimes we don't think about that, but that is a really important part of what senior centers do, especially in a town like this, where seniors are such a substantial component of the overall population. The senior center provides leadership for the community as a whole. They bring issues related to seniors to the attention of the community, to the town leaders. They push for programs and services that seniors need. They advocate for seniors in their community. So that leadership component is very important. And in fact, I would argue that putting in place this needs assessment was an important leadership activity that Jill and her Council on Aging took on. So I think all of those things are really important. And we heard to some extent about all of them. One of the things we learned is that when you just asked people of different ages through the sample survey again, are you participating in the senior center? Do you go to senior center activities? Not so many if you're 60 to 69. Some, but not so many, about 10%, less than 10%. By the time we're looking at people in their 80s, almost 30%. All right, so there's a clear upward trajectory by age in terms of who participates in senior center activities. I think a lot of that relates to retirement. People often don't have time to participate in activities, especially those that occur during the day when they're still working, when they're maybe involved with high school children, when they have lots of other responsibilities. But once people have fewer responsibilities, they start looking around for things to do. They start looking around for support for some of their concerns, and they head for the senior center. The interest in using the senior center is very high, both for boomers and for seniors. In fact, we'll focus first on seniors. So these are people who are of the age where they could be going to the senior centers. The programs are really designed for them. So the senior population, about half of them are interested in using the senior center in the future. So even though not half of them are actually participating, half of them are interested and are likely to head here at some point. The other half, for the most part, said, I don't know. So clearly they're thinking, well, something might happen. They might have a really great program that I want to participate in, or something might happen to me where I need some help, I need some support, and I would head for the senior center. The other piece of this, and we'll hit on it again over and over again, is that a lot of people don't know very much about the senior center. They don't really know what happens here. And so I think some of this I don't know, or like, well, I don't really know what they do, and so how do I know if I would go there? And so I think that's one important thing that we learned that the town needs to work on, the senior center needs to work on, is getting the information out. What does the senior center do? What happens there? How might people be interested in that? Again, I think the other point is, one point is that very few people say, no, not for me, I'm not going there. The other important point is that level of interest was just about as high for boomers as for seniors. So when boomers are looking ahead, they're saying, yeah, that's something that I am likely to be interested in. And so that suggests that planning for the future probably need to be planning for increasing levels of interest. We asked about satisfaction with the services that are currently in place. And here in this chart, we broke it out by people who had used the services and those who hadn't. And what we found was that, in fact, the people who have used the services in the past are very satisfied. Almost 70% of them say they're completely or very satisfied. Very few of them, virtually you can barely see that little green block down there, are not at all satisfied. The people who have never used the services are also pretty satisfied. Okay? All right? Not quite as satisfied as if they had used them. But I think what that suggests is that the overall image that the senior center has in the community is good. People hear good things, even if they haven't participated in them themselves. They're satisfied with what is happening in the senior center, even if they haven't used them themselves. So I think that's important to know, that as the senior center moves ahead and plans, they're building on strength. Okay. We did hear about some challenges with the senior center, including, as I mentioned before, information gaps. A lot of people, some of the people answering our survey said, I didn't know we had one of those. I'm surprised to be getting a survey asking me about the senior center because I didn't know it existed. Some of them say that they don't know how to access the programs. They don't know how to participate, even though what they heard about them, sometimes just through the survey, sounded pretty good. We heard a number of statements from respondents saying that the center is too small. We heard about difficulties parking. I heard about difficulties parking this morning. So we heard a lot of those kinds of things, concerns that the center wasn't quite what it needed to be to meet the expectations of the users. Our general sense is that, again, then, that the center is building on strength, has a good reputation, it has a good and valued staff. It's not quite what it needs to be, especially based on the growth of the senior population in the community. We wanted to get a little bit of information about specific programs and services. What are the kinds of things that the center ought to be looking at as it plans ahead? Once again, I've broken these services out into two components, one being the service information and referral type of thing that the center does, and that's what this reflects. These are the 3 top rated people who thought they were very important, very valuable to the community. And we saw seniors and boomers attaching great value to information and referral, health and wellness, and assistance with programs. So these are bread and butter activities that senior centers do. They're done here. They're highly valued. They're highly valued by current seniors, either for themselves or for the friends and neighbors that they have in the community. They're highly valued by boomers, for their parents who live here, for their neighbors who live here, and for their future selves. All right, so these are clearly important activities. And in terms of programs and activities, that other half of the familiar part of what senior centers do, we saw very high enthusiasm for fitness activities, for learning opportunities, for trips and outings. These are the things, again, that the senior center is very heavily engaged in, and they're getting that right. Those are very valued by the community. One of the things that communities are very interested in is trying to get a sense of, when you're planning ahead, you don't want to plan just for today's 60, 70, 80-year-olds. You want to think about, well, what's coming down the road? What's going to happen when the baby boomers come to the senior center? When they're turning 60, 70, 80, what are they going to expect? Everybody's convinced that the boomers are really different, which sort of remains to be seen. But when we asked boomers and seniors about future programming, what might the senior center do that it's not doing now? Or what might it do more of in the future? We did see some differences that might be important. These were the activities that both groups rated highly as important for future needs: walking clubs, social programs, computer courses, swim programs, lifelong learning, active exercise. For many of them, the pattern for the boomers and the seniors is relatively similar, but the biggest differences between boomers and seniors are for what we think of as active aging. Okay? So you see a big difference here in terms of walking club. The boomers are clearly much more interested in that than today's seniors. Similarly with swim programs and active exercise. This may suggest that in the future, the boomers are going to want the same kinds of things that seniors have now, but they may be even more interested in those active aging programs than seniors now already are. Okay, so what that suggests then in terms of planning ahead is, well, maybe you should have more programming around those active aging issues. Maybe you should think about the exercise class. Somebody was talking before we started about, are we going to have more exercise programs, that kind of things. Clearly that's an interest right now. It may be even more of an interest in the future. All right, that's what I'm going to share with you with respect to the sample survey. We do have a report that is going to be online within the next week or so, I would imagine. And so you'll be able to look at the whole thing if you want to see it, and I encourage you to do it. It does make for hopefully interesting reading. But I want to share a few thoughts with you from my interviews with town officials and focus groups. So we did talk to a number of town officials. We talked to a number of representatives from other town offices like the police department, the fire department, and nonprofits in the community. And we learned some important things. These are three themes that came out very strongly from those conversations. One is the importance of education. You know, I talked a moment ago about how we were hearing from even some of today's seniors through that sample survey that they didn't really know that there was a senior center. They didn't really know what happens here. We found the same thing for town offices and organizations and some of your town leaders, all right? Clearly, some of them have made it their business to know a lot about the senior center, and you might see them here periodically. Some of them are thinking more about other things, and that's to be expected, okay? But I think that what is very clear is that there is an information gap out there with respect to the senior center, and especially given that it is such a valued piece of the community and its value is likely to escalate in the future, I think an important part of moving ahead for the Senior Center and the Council on Aging is to educate your town leaders and your other town organizations about this issue and about senior issues. Another point that came out was the importance of communication between offices. I think that really speaks to the theme about how seniors are an important part of the entire community and that all the town offices are seeing more seniors coming into their offices and having needs or requests that those town offices need to respond to. And so I think the more offices can communicate about senior issues, be educated about senior issues, and share information about what seniors in Falmouth need and want, the more integrated those services and the more value there will be in the community around senior issues. And then I think the other thing that we heard, and again, we heard it from the very beginning parts of the conversations that we had and all the way through all of our data collections, but especially from these groups, is the idea that meeting the needs of seniors by thinking about how are we going to make Falmouth a better place for seniors to age in place, you can, in fact, enhance the livability of Falmouth for the entire community. All right. So, for instance, one of the things that we heard about were things like the medical services are pretty good, but they're not as good as we need. Now, this might be something that comes primarily out of the senior community. That might be a concern that seniors have more than younger people. But in fact, enhancing the medical facilities in a community really contributes to the livability for the entire population. All right? So that public transportation is another issue. Improving transportation options is something that maybe seniors are more concerned about right now, but it enhanced the livability of the entire community. So thinking about those and explaining to the community what a large senior population means and what a large senior population needs and values, and framing that in a way that makes it clear this is not just about seniors and it's not just about the senior center. It's really about making Falmouth a better place for everyone to live. All right. I think that's an important part of the conversation, and I think it's a very true part of the conversation. Okay. One last thing that we were asked to do, because as you know, the Council on Aging is trying to look ahead and thinking about, well, what do other towns do with respect to their senior centers, their senior services? What are some of our peer communities, and what do they have in place? What do they offer for their community? So we were asked to look at some of those other communities and share with you some information about what they do, in fact, have in place. Now, this is a very busy chart that I will take you through and not spend too awful much time on. But our goal in this chart was to really compare the size and age of the senior center in place in a given community with the size of its senior population. So it really is just sort of a ratio of sorts. How many seniors are there given the size of the center? All right, so the towns we looked at here that you can't read are Mashpee, Marshfield, Yarmouth, Falmouth, Plymouth, and Barnstable. Okay? These bars right here tell us how big is the center in square feet. So for instance, Mashpee, how many people have been to Mashpee Senior Center? I know, we heard about it. People love Mashpee Senior Center. Okay. Absolutely. 10,000 square feet for, and this is the line is the population of seniors, people 60 and over, for just about number of seniors, something just around 5,000 seniors. Okay. All right, so you can see that the size of the population, the number of seniors, Falmouth is right about in the middle there, but its senior center is way down here. Okay. So now, this is an example. This is an example of a chart that's easy to show. It's much more difficult to figure out how can we really capture the value of what happens in the senior center to the community. All right. So I don't want to mislead you here. I don't want to suggest that, gosh, if you only had a senior center as large as the one in Plymouth, everything would be great. Okay. It's not that simple. And your Council on Aging and your director of the senior center knows that, and I think they're committed to figuring out what is right for Falmouth, okay? But I think it is just one indicator of how different communities really are approaching this issue of a growing senior population. They're approaching that issue in unique ways. They're putting a lot of programs in place. They're spending a lot of time and effort figuring out how can we best serve the needs of seniors in our community. The size of their center is one example of that, but of course what's much more important is what happens inside the center. The center itself is going to create some of the parameters for what can happen in the center. But those activities, those programs, those services, the staffing, all of that is critically important as well. And so that will also be part of the conversation. Okay. The other thing I said, we also looked into the age of the center in Falmouth is the oldest of these centers. It was built in 1977. Some of these are quite new. Many communities are building new senior centers in response to the growth of the older population. I also just wanted to show you some of these. Again, half the room has been to this one, so you know what it looks like. It was opened in 2004. It has a nice profile. So there are some good examples nearby on the South Shore, throughout Cape Cod, where communities have put a lot of thought and effort into designing services and centers for their community. Barnstable also looks very nice. It's charming. Falmouth is a charming community. It is indeed. All right. I am coming to the end of my little conversation with you today, and I have my implications and recommendations put in two categories. One, we did not really start this project wanting to hear as much or expecting to hear as much about the senior center per se. Maybe I was naive because obviously it's a very big issue in town right now. But we did hear a lot about that, and so I wanted to share with you. If you are looking ahead, thinking about some substantial investment in the community, either in renovation, in building, in rethinking how services and programs are going to be offered to seniors, then these would be the things that we would suggest you think about. One of them, I use the term assume increasing demand, but that's not quite as emphatic as I might like. You're going to have increasing demand. Simply based on that growth in the senior population, if the rate of use of the senior center, let's say about 20%, if we average out that age curve, around 20% of the seniors 10 years from now, 15 years from now, use the senior center, you're going to have dramatic growth in the demands placed on the senior center. If, as often happens, what happens is people become more focused on senior issues, they put more programs in place, they put more activities in place, and demand goes up. So instead of 20% of seniors using the center, maybe you have 30% or 40%. That, combined with the growth in the senior population, could result in something that would really overwhelm this space very quickly, and this staff very quickly. So I think assuming increasing demand is just a given. And thinking about how to respond to that then is something that you all need to do. Define programming needs as a basis for identifying space and staffing needs. I think this is a little bit of an obvious point, but I think it's worth emphasizing. That is, what's important are the programs and the services that happen here. And what you need to do, and hopefully our research will help with that, you need to define what are the important programs and activities that we need to have for the Council on Aging, for the Senior Center. What are the things that we need to be doing in this town for seniors? And then say, what is the building that will be required in order to do that? So I think to really get those priorities straight in terms of what comes first and what follows, both in terms of your own thinking and planning and in terms of your communication with the rest of the community and with the town leaders. I think those are important. Design programs that support active and healthy aging goals. Today's seniors are very interested in participating in things that will help them be active, help them age well in a healthy way. Tomorrow's seniors appear to have even stronger interest around that. Plan for shifting interests and needs. We don't know for sure that boomers are going to be different, but everybody thinks that they will. And even today's seniors are a very mixed pool in terms of their interests, all right? One of the interviews that I conducted with one of your town leaders, they were talking about, do we need a computer room? A lot of newer senior centers have a room designated to computers. They have a bunch of computers around and everybody can come in and use the computers. And this person I was interviewing said, 10 years from now, are seniors going to need a computer room? Or do they need a place kind of like a Starbucks where they can come and have coffee and bring their laptops and tap into the wireless? And I thought, well, we don't know. We do not know. But I think it's important to build in that sense of flexibility so that you, whatever you have in place, you'll be able to respond to those shifting interests and needs, because we know they will be shifting. We just don't know for sure what they'll shift to. And then finally, the importance of partnerships around financing, around everything. Senior centers, they use a lot of volunteers. They generate a lot of, they do a lot of fundraising. All of those kinds of things are important. So really just building that into everything you do is important and will continue to be important. Our recommendations for the town as a whole: plan for substantial growth for the town as a whole, not just the senior center. Consider ways to leverage existing services and programs within the community. This is something the senior center already does. Connecting people with services, connecting people with programs that are already in the community or elsewhere that they may be eligible for. Do that even more, because there are a lot of great programs and great offices in Falmouth right now that seniors either may not be fully aware of or may not know how to access or may feel those are not for me. And so pulling those things together in a more strategic way would be helpful. Use planning for the expanding senior population as an opportunity to promote the livability for Falmouth as a whole. We already talked about that very important point. Strengthen those community pathways between town offices, town organizations. Make sure that everybody is talking to one another about this issue. recognize the diversity of the senior population. All the seniors here don't live in huge houses with lots of money and are in great health and get out every single day. There are a lot of seniors and others in this community that struggle with many issues. So don't be sure to keep those people in mind and include them in your planning. Prioritize dissemination of information about the senior center to the community, to seniors, to others, other age groups, and all the way through the town officials. That is a huge thing that needs to be done right now. Thank you.
We'd like to open it up if you have any questions at this point in time.
What age is a boomer?
Well, this is,
I want to know what a boomer is. I want to know if I'm a boomer.
she wants to know, the boomer population technically was born, the way we measured it here was 45 to 59.
Repeat.
60 and over is a senior. It's Administration on Aging federal government designation. That is one of the challenges that communities always have. People saying, 60, I'm not a senior. 70, I'm not a senior. 80, I'm not a senior. So those labels are always an issue. It is just a convenient label, but it does refer to 60 and over. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You showed very nicely the comparison among the different towns and the size of their senior center. Did you also do similar comparisons about utilization in those towns or budget in those towns compared to Falmouth?
Yes, the report includes more information about the communities, more about their demographic situation. The towns that we chose to begin with were towns that were not too drastically different from Falmouth in key ways in terms of size and share of the population and then level of education and income. And so we did try to choose towns that people here would recognize as at least a little bit like them. And so that was one of the entry points, but we also included that budget information and some other information about them. Yeah.
You referred on your last slide, I guess, to financial partnerships. What kinds of partnerships are allowed by state and local law that a senior center could get involved in? For example, can a food chain have a concession at a senior center?
What a great question for Jill.
That is a great question. A lot of the senior centers deal with the elder services and have their food programs similar to our community. We have Meals on Wheels. So that is something we would be looking into because offering congregate meals is something we definitely want to have in a new senior center. So.
Sorry. The issue of the percent of seniors that use the senior center, how much of this, is it possible to tease out how much of this is a chicken and egg issue, that you don't have the facility so people don't utilize it, and as you pointed out in your last slide, I've said before that to some extent the senior center preaches to the choir. They talk to the people who've come to the senior center before, but not necessarily to the general population. And what is your comment about that?
My comment is that most of the evidence, pretty much all of the evidence we have about that is anecdotal. However, the person I talk to most often about this is in the Office of Elder Affairs. There's a guy there, Emmett Schmarso, who keeps track of all the senior centers in the entire state. And it has been his observation over about 30 years working in that office that very consistently, if you provide programming and services in a senior center that really gets it right, hits the right target in terms of what people want and what they need, and if you communicate that effectively, then people just come out of the woodwork. And so that has been his observation, and I have talked with many, many directors of senior centers who have had that experience themselves. I think the other point that, that I'd like to make is something also based on observations and conversations with a lot of people, which is that a very effective and important thing for centers to do is to do what they can to get people familiar with the senior center early on. All right? One of your own town leaders that I interviewed talked with me about the importance of putting in place really good programs, even for boomers, for instance. I mean, some of them might be caregiver programs, for instance, or retirement planning programs, or just something really neat that happened to happen at the senior center that would get people in the door early on so that it wasn't so distant from the rest of the community. So it was something that was already familiar to the rest of the community. Because even if seniors are never going to want to come here to exercise, or never going to want to take a trip through the senior center and use those sort of amenity-based services, at some point, many of them might need a service that's provided through the senior center. And you want them to already know that, the availability of those services. You want them to already be familiar with the building. So I think the more integrated you can make a senior center with the rest of the community, the better off you'll be in general. And I think to, you know, the kind of programming that is currently being considered, and I think the kind of revisions to the space that are currently being considered can help with that.
Sorry. In that regard, is there experience statewide, which it sounds like you have information about partnerships with the senior center and other groups? Comes to mind is that there's a group in Falmouth trying to put together a Y, and it made perfect sense to me when I heard that should be proximate to the senior center, because there'd be tremendous ability to share space and to share programming. Is there that kind of, do you have experience with that in other communities?
Again, my evidence is anecdotal. All right. I think ultimately what works in every community is what's right for that community. And those are things that and there's no outsider that can really tell you what that's going to be. So that really is something that you all need to determine. However, I have talked with people about truly shared space. So you're talking about proximate, which I think is somewhat of a different story, but literally in the same space. And I have heard of situations where that created problems. Just in terms of constantly having to negotiate issues around parking or timing, scheduling, things of that nature, that it can be a struggle. Yes.
My question or comment is sort of along those same lines. My life's passion has been abused and neglected children. I'm a social worker, I have a license, and I've been a foster parent. And what I have seen amongst those parents is that they are having children because they are lost and alone. And that's not working. And now I am a hearing aid professional in the town of Falmouth, so my population is elder. And I am just feeling like this is our social issue, is that we're separating our generations from each other. The elders may be physically weak, but experience-wise and wisdom-wise and needing to be needed and able to be needed and vice versa is just, I'm very passionate about it. In fact, I found that there's a Temple University program in intergenerational approaches to things, and I'm going to attend. Jill and I have talked about this, and I want to bring that back to Falmouth too. So any more comments on that? It almost hurts me to think of us separating more, the generations separating more from each other.
Well, I guess I would say initially that I don't think that's what is being discussed here. I mean, I think that, you know, you're right. If you have something called a senior center, then that sort of implies separation. But in fact, there are many communities where the senior center is a very integral part of the community as a whole. And I think what we were talking about here and what we're recommending is that Jill and others really take on that leadership role to create where that integration is not already occurring, but to create it and to strengthen that. So I think that that's an important point to keep in mind. And I will also say that many senior centers do have intergenerational programming. It's not the whole of what they do, but it is part of what they do. I think I heard something about programs in the public schools with seniors here going into the public schools or something like that. It might not be through the senior center, it might be a program that some other organization is doing, but there are a lot of places where those kinds of integrations can occur. And I think that, that they are important. They're things that some people really want to participate in. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Serena Piccolo Smith. I'm actually part of the effort to bring a YMCA to this town. And I just wanted to let you know that there is an example of a senior center within next to a YMCA. It's right here in Massachusetts. It's Scantic Valley YMCA in Wilbraham. And apparently, the CEO who built that YMCA is actually a citizen here in Falmouth, a resident in Falmouth. And we are just bringing in to our group just to explore that as possible. So if you want information, I'll be happy to share it with you about it. Thank you.
This is going to be a little bit of a commercial. Not for Leanne Carbone and her hearing business. If you are having trouble hearing, please see Leanne on the way out. I'm Bruce McKelligan. I'm the treasurer and a board member of the Friends of the Falmouth Senior Center. We are a nonprofit organization that raises funds for the benefit of the senior center, senior programs and activities, etc. I'm sure many of you are members of the Friends. We appreciate that. A comment that I was thinking about and chatting with someone just recently was, we're coming to the town now with a request for a new senior center, which is serious capital dollars. And is our timing right or wrong? Let me suggest to you, no, let me tell you that the Friends of the Falmouth Senior Center was formed in 2002, and I've been part of that organization ever since. The initial title of the organization was the Friends of the New Falmouth Senior Center, because it was anticipated that in the not too distant future, we might have a new senior center. In other words, need already was recognized. Now we see that need very, very well illustrated in the study that's just been done and presented to us this morning. But all of that is not new. It's refreshing, it's up to date, but it's not brand new because the need has been there for many years and was recognized as long ago as 2002. Now, that begs the question, what happened? Well, of course, the town has never had endless capital expenditure dollars. So there had to be a schedule of who was going to be, well, what was going to be done next with the available funding. And in fact, we had a study done 7 or 8 years ago. There was a presentation brought to town meeting, and we were close to having some action at that time. But along came some other, both expected and unexpected capital needs expenditures. Many of you will know some of those things. And so that kind of set us back. So here we are again, and I think I'm remembering a line, I think, from a popular song from years ago. I will not sing it. And the line is, "Our time has come. If you will, it's our turn." Now we know, and you've read and you've heard, that this building, which doesn't compare so greatly, does it, to the buildings of some of our neighbor towns. And one that wasn't presented on the screen, I call it the Taj Mahal, is the Senior Center in Duxbury. Lovely, lovely facility. We probably have 3 times the seniors in Falmouth as they do in Duxbury. Thinking about Duxbury, the Taj Mahal, I lost my train of thought. It just came back. This building, as we've learned, is about 4,200, 4,300 square feet. This room, where most of the activities occur, is only 2,000 square feet. So in a sense, we have a room of 2,000 square feet to try to accommodate all of the needs of today. And as we've been presented this morning, seeing the growing population and how therefore the needs will grow. If you got here later rather than earlier, you scrambled to find a parking place. I don't understand why. We've got 28 spaces out there. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, except to say the need has been recognized for a long time and presented very clearly in the wonderful study that's just been done and presented to us. So, altogether, we need to, I was going to say gang up on. That's really not the right way to put it. We need to impress the right people with the need that exists so that priority may be given to the senior center. It's our turn. Our day has come. That is right from Jill's computer to mine. The whole thing, that was a texted sheet. I'm kidding.
Any other questions?
Yes, Jill, after that statement and that presentation, which was great, I just want to know, how can we as citizens help to see this come true?
Well, I'd like to recognize the chairman of the Council on Aging Board is Jim Vieira. This is the first step in a positive direction for all of us in our journey, and I'd like Jim to let you know what our next steps are as we move forward.
I will address that question for you. I've been the chairman of the Council on Aging now for about 6 months, so I'm a little bit new to this, and I wasn't around for the whole history that Bruce gave you, but I am committed to helping this project go forward. And since I've been the chairman, the 3 questions that I get continually, and Jill does too, is, are we going to get a new center? Where is it going to be? And when is it going to happen? And I think that at this point in time, I'm confident to say that we finally have the community support in the right places to make this go forward. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is that it has shown up now in the long-term capital plan for the town. So the administrators have recognized the need and have plugged us in as a capital project. We have the support of the majority of the Board of Selectmen recognizing that this is the next major need that the town needs to address. So where do we go from there is the question of where. Under the Board of Selectmen, we are forming a working group that over the next 2 months is going to be looking at sites and buildings and taking all those alternatives and making a list of criteria to evaluate them. And certainly the issue that was brought up today concerning the why is something that will be brought into that equation. So over the next 2 months, we'll be evaluating all the sites and buildings in town that might be suitable. And at that point, we'll make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as to what our recommendations are for a site or two. We have an article in this spring's town meeting in April to fund a feasibility study. What I mean by a feasibility study is that a consultant will take the recommendation that this working group will say about where the senior center might go and turn that into the information that we need to go to town meeting and the voters, meaning a basic plan of a building and the space needs, how much it'll cost to build, site improvements, if it's an existing building, what would need to be done to the building to renovate it, how much that would cost. So we have partial funding for that already. We're going to go to town meeting in April for whatever the balance is. So when that step is finished, we'll be ready to go to town meeting for the design and actual construction money. I anticipate we'll be ready to do that in a year from this April of 2015. Now the question is, will the Board of Selectmen and the administration and town meeting support us at that time? Does it fit into the big picture? That's where you folks come in. That's where we need your help. We, as Bruce said, we need the voice, we need the participation. We need you all to put pressure on our leaders to say, yes, this is our time. We know we're in the long-term plan. We know that we're in the capital budget, but we want it to be in the capital budget then. We want it to be voted on then. So how can you help us? You know, there are maybe 120 people here. So for every one of you, there's another 100 seniors out there. It doesn't take a lot to get heard. The enterprise has been wonderfully supportive of our efforts. Letters to the editor and the enterprise go a long, long way. People read the enterprise. Our leaders read the enterprise. The Board of Selectmen have instituted a wonderful little public comment period at their meetings, whereas as a citizen of Falmouth, you can go to the Board of Selectmen's meeting and get 2 minutes to tell them what you need, to tell them that it's a priority for you. We have the strength to make this happen, but you need to be heard. Those are a couple of ways to be heard. Talk to your town meeting members. Talk to your friends. Let them know that this is a priority for you. You've been a taxpayer here for a year, or 10 years, or 50 years. You have strength in numbers. There is strength in numbers. And we've seen tonight that we have, this afternoon, that we have the numbers. And we can make this happen. But the when part, that's where we need your help. Because the obvious answer is it can't happen too soon. I just went from being a boomer, apparently, to being a senior a couple of weeks ago.
Welcome aboard.
You know, and the one thing that no one can ever have a problem with or say it's not right is that none of us are getting any younger here sitting in this room. And I think we have come to the point where, as Bruce said, it is our time, and we need to be heard, and we need your help to be heard, because we're working hard, but we need your help and your support to make it happen. Thank you. Jill, do you want to wrap up?
I want to make the comment to you. We have enough people. If the town fathers wants to open their website, we're going to flood that thing with 10,000 votes overnight. They know about it, and that's the support. You cannot go one by one. They're going to listen to you and then just throw it away. Let them open the website, and let's vote to it. Can we get any better support?
Keep it coming. Keep the pressure on. The website. Let me try to understand what your question is. You would like to have the website accept comments from the public?
No, the support that we need, the senior center. If you want to put the pressure to these people to know that we need that facility, let's have a non-binding vote to it, to tell them many people will go through it's the simplest way if you go through the website. You want to walk one by one to the selectmen meeting? It's not going to do you much good, but you can try that thing. No, I can offer you that if we go to the facilities, do you want to go to put it on a town referendum or something? It's the simplest way, in my opinion, is let's open a website.
We have a wonderful procedure in this town where a group of people can get together and have a petition to town meeting. We've seen that very recently as this week. And it is certainly an avenue that anyone can take. What we are doing as a council on aging is we are following the prescribed route to get a project done. What you folks choose to do as a group, you know, and if there is a petition out there to let the town know that this is a priority for you, then that's certainly an avenue that you should take.
I just have a question. You answered my question, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, did I turn it on? Probably.
My question is, you talked about a committee getting together to view sites and whatever. Would there be a residential community, some people from the community, residents, seniors, that can be involved in that group? And if so, how do you get involved?
Okay, the group has been formed by the selectmen. They are actually right now looking for a member to represent the public on that group. And if you submit a letter to the Board of Selectmen, I think until next week, through Friday, they are looking for a public representative to sit in our group. It's a very small group. And for anyone out there who would like to participate in this project directly within the group, very simple, submit your name to the Board of Selectmen.
May I just follow up?
Sure.
I have tried, and I'm going to give you a comparison with one thing that I have tried with selectmen today. Why they want to demolish the Zielinski house? It is a historical house, and they are just brushing the thing. I gave them a paper 3 weeks ago, nothing, just threw it in the wastebasket, not even a response to the thing.
Sir, that's another topic, you know. Well, I understand what you're talking about, but that is for another place and another time.
Yes, I understand. But walking one by
Let's wrap
one
this
is
up.
not going to get you anywhere.
We want to wrap this up, Jim?
So I'd like to thank you all for being here. We look forward to hearing more from you as we proceed with this process. Stay warm, drive safely, and we'll talk to you all soon.